Hello, welcome to Studies in Theatre MOOCs program. Today we are going to discuss Indian theatre in specific. Although we have seen some glimpses of Indian theatre and its background discussions in some previous lectures, but since it's such an important area of studies, especially for theatre, therefore we must dedicate this entire discussion. So, in the introductory aspects of Indian theatre, we have already discussed these issues that Theatre of India is an ancient form of dramatic expression dating back to around the first millennium BC. It incorporates rich elements such as text, sculptures, and dramatic effects. Similar to music and dance, Indian theatre is shaped by Nritya, a Sanskrit term encompassing drama, narrative, dance, and music. Indian theatre has historically influenced regions beyond its borders because the shape of the Indian nation that is today was not earlier. In fact, more than what is Indian subcontinent today used to be impacted by the culture that we are talking right now. So it also included China and other eastern countries. Ancient China means some parts of China were also under the influence of this culture directly, and of course indirectly various other parts of the world were also under this influence. Then it also extended its cultural expression, illustrating significance on a global scale. So, even today, Indian theatre has been a very strong paradigm of its cultural outreach, and it expands beyond borders and is present in the entire world map as a very important discussion. It is characterized by a unique performance style incorporating speech, gesture, music, dance, and sound. So, Indian style of performance has a very distinctive ambience. The moment you look at it, the moment you feel it, you are immediately influenced by it, and you can make identify it that this is Indian. It developed independently, largely uninfluenced by other cultures in its original time period, or that is the earliest time period, and set trends that other cultures later adopted. Themes in Indian drama range from divine and royal narratives drawn from history or mythology to social works focusing on ordinary people and their moral dilemmas. Now in the modern time period, or modern time sense, there are a lot of renowned playwrights across various ages, which are known even today. And in addition to them, there are playwrights and dramatists working in this time period also, who are enriching the spectrum of Indian drama. Renowned playwrights like Bhash, Kalidas, Tagore, they have very significantly contributed to Indian drama in distinctive fashion. Now, for the sake of studying it as an academic discourse, just for that sake, you can divide the three main periods: classical, traditional, and modern periods of Indian drama. This will help you in correlating different kinds of changes and evolution that is there, that will be able to easily register in your mind. So, the classical period of Indian drama spanned from 1500 to 1000 BC. Kalidas's very well known play Shakuntala is a very important example. It is a literary magnum opus as well as a very important performance text, which is an amalgam of classical Indian drama techniques. The brilliance of all classical Indian drama techniques is visible in this text. Another playwright, Bhash, or you can call him Bhas, regarded as the founding figure of Indian drama, authored 13 original plays. Very few of his plays have survived, so we can't really say whether how many plays did he write actually, but some of his plays have survived in complete shape, and they are 13. He is acknowledged as his contribution is very important, and in theatrical history of India, he must be one of the important departure points. Then ancient classical dramas find their roots in texts like Rig Veda, featuring stories as Pururav Urvashi, Yam Yami, Indra Indrani, Sarma Pani, Usha's Suktas. The epics Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Arthashastra also contain elements of storytelling and enriching the classical Indian theatrical tradition. And it is for this reason that using the poetics of Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra, there are hundreds and hundreds of performances across the length and breadth of this continent, subcontinent called India, where the stories are borrowed from epics like Mahabharata and Ramayana. Origin of Sanskrit theatre is in Vedic period, and religious ceremonies, rituals, like many classical traditions of the world, classical theatre traditions of the world. Earliest recognized works are identifiable theatre, Sanskrit theatre works that emerged in the first and second centuries CE. Pioneering playwrights like Ashru Ghosh, a Buddhist monk from the mid 1st to mid 2nd centuries CE, is the first important playwright who figures. Although his works are incomplete, then Bhash, who lived around the 3rd to 4th century CE, developed fully formed plays and contributed significantly to defining Sanskrit theatre's themes, aesthetics, and formulas. So you can see one glimpse of this is visible in the picture that is before on your screen. So dating back to the Buddha period and evolved through the Vedic times, the Sanskrit theatre was influenced by various philosophers and scholars. The art was then redefined by Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra. Continuing from here, the another influential figure is Kalidas, who is believed to have lived around the 4th century CE and is widely regarded as the greatest Sanskrit drama writer. His works played a very important role in establishing Sanskrit theatre as the revered aspect of Indian high culture. Now, all of us have heard Kalidas's name and his play Shakuntala, Abhigyan Shakuntalam, the Sanskrit title, is a seminal work which has inspired so many modern plays, drama, musicals, cinema, and storyline that is there. The plot line which is there in this play has become one of the original, one of the proto plot line or proto storyline for various kinds of productions that can be attributed in the modern world, modern theatre world of India and beyond. Some characteristics of Sanskrit theatre are that its performance and space style. Number one, that is a very significant thing. Sanskrit dramas were typically performed in intimate settings, allowing the audience to be in close proximity to the actors. So, the setting of this kind of a tradition was not like the amphitheaters in the Greek culture. The setting of this particular theater culture was that audience and actors were in close proximity to each other. In fact, they were in the distance in so close that they could shake hands with each other, although that was not done. But this kind of immersive, it borders on an immersive experience because this proximity does not make the audience and actors distanced from each other the way it is visible in amphitheater pattern of Greek culture theater and proscenium style theater that emerged in the Western tradition later on. Actors relied on dramatic facial expressions and narratives akin to the styles seen in Greek and Shakespearean dramas. But one similarity that we find between the Greek and the Shakespearean and Indian theatre of classical times is that the body language and narratives are quite similar. The mannerisms in which emotions are conveyed, that is also quite comparable. Productions often featured minimal sets and properties, with pantomime used to represent objects or scenes which were not physically present on stage. So, like horse or a bed or kitchen utensils, or door, windows, separate quarters of a house, or separate sections of a palace. These were not created through structures constructed as property or set design, but these were represented through the actions of the playwrights, actions of the actor, and the whole feel of the stage was minimal, because the focus was on actors' movement, actors' body language, and actors' style of delivering the dialogues. The productions were meticulously crafted, involving various stage technicians, costumers, makeup artists, conductors, and a director known as Sutradhar, who introduced the play to the audience. Now, more than the other aspects like technical aspects, costume designers, and people who are taking care of the entire production, the more important aspect is Sutradhar. Sutradhar is something very crucial, something very original, and very representational of classical Indian theatre. A Sutradhar is a person who comes on stage before the play starts, sometimes in between the scenes, when the scene shifts are taking place, and at the end of the play, to connect the narrative of the play from within the scenes, and also to give those discussions and those information which are not staged, which are not presented, but are important for the audience to connect the dots. In addition to this role, Sutradhar also has an intellectual role to play in the production and in the representation of a play. And that role is that he not only explains the storyline, but he also gives a perspective to the audience. His perspective creates a clarity in the mind of audience, because the idea of audience centeredness, to the extent that the plays would be left open ended, was not something that you could expect in Sanskrit classical theatre. It was something which was in totality represented, narrated, and presented on the stage, and the audience was to make and decipher, interpret, and entertain themselves on the basis of the complete storyline, the complete narrative, in which Sutradhar played an important role. Next, what we can see is the character archetypes. So, characters are archetypal in this theatre culture. The common archetypes are noble hero, known as the Nayak or a Nayaka, whose adventures form the central focus of the narrative. Then Naika, or the hero's love interest, who played a significant role in the storyline. Additionally, the presence of a jester or a clown figure called the Vidushak, who added comedic elements to the performances. So these three personas are very crucial. They have to be there. They are elementary to the whole setup of the play writing. But there can be some minor figures as well. But there can be plural naika, means naikas. There can be more than one female protagonist sometimes, because if there is a love triangle like case, then that can be the possibility. But there can be some minor characters, like minor female characters and minor male characters as well. And the qualities of a hero are qualities of the heroine, which is Nayak and Nayika are stereotype representations of the good and the bad, the evil and the noble. So by the end, when the play sums up and resolves all conflicts, the good always is emerging as victorious, and the evil is losing the path. So this is generally the theme, and the representation is done through these kinds of stock characters. Then this text Natya Shastra, which is the most celebrated text of Indian classical period, written in Sanskrit, that is connected essentially to theatre, is a very important document that represents a couple of information. The first and foremost is that how advanced the Indian time period of Sanskrit age was, that there was a need for someone like Bharat Muni to write an entire book of treatise, entire book of poetics on what are the do's and don'ts of theatre. This book is such a futuristic text that even today it acts as a handbook for actors and theater enthusiasts if they want to create a production. So, this was written at a time where most of the parts of the world did not have a very institutionalized theater tradition. Other than the Greeks, it was India, and maybe we never know it was older, because this kind of factual history is always debatable, and we need to have more researchers in these aspects of Indian knowledge system, because unlike the Western knowledge system, Indian knowledge system has not been thoroughly researched into. So Natya Shastra is authored by Bharat Muni, and it is a very well-known fact, and it stands as the earliest book on dramaturgy globally, not just in India but globally. It is regarded as the foundational text of theatre. Now, what was the need of writing such a book? Only when there was so much theatre that it was feasible for a critic, for a writer to theorize the action on stage and put it down and document in the form of a book so that people can benefit from it. So this means that a lot of theatre was taking place at that time, and it was feasible for people to pen down the poetics of that theatre in order to create a handbook. This book serves as a comprehensive manual. It covers various aspects of theatre, including stage design, costumes, music, dance, and acting. Its influence extends deeply into the realm of Indian classical dance forms even today, such as Bharatnatyam, Kathak, Kuchipudi, Manipuri, Odishi, and other dances of India or performance traditions of India, which has also shaped the evolution of these performance cultures and performance traditions. In its pages, Natya Shastra delves into the exploration of rasas, which I've discussed in previous lectures also, and it advocates for the dynamic utilization of the human body in theatrical expressions. Some of the basic elements of Natya Shastra are Pathya, a readable text including the art of recitation and rendition in performance taken from the Rig Veda. So Pathya is a narrative, a text which is readable, and it is rendered in the style which is borrowed from Rig Veda, and it rendered and recited properly in the play. Then Sangeet, which is songs, music, which includes instrumental music also, and the tips of it are taken from Samved. Then Abhinaya, or acting, or the technique of expressing the poetic meaning of the text. It's the meaning of the text, it's the interpretation of the text, it's the plot line, it's the storyline, it's the emotions. So, through acting, through Abhinay, all these things are delivered further, and a furtherance in the plot line, in the action of the play, or in the whole drama sense is taking place. Then we have the rasa theory of Natya Shastra, where different arts and its essence is conveyed in different styles of Natya. These are graceful, energetic, grand, verbal styles are present, and we have already seen the detailed aspect of rasa theory in the previous discussions. So, what is relevant for us now is to move forward to understand how different theatres, other than the classical theatre of Sanskrit period, were also developing, although there were some lean periods because of the different kinds of rulers that we had in different parts of the country for a long time. These traditions may have gone to some kind of lean period, but these traditions have survived and are very much alive and kicking, and are creating a vibrant performance culture in the subcontinent. Now, this traditional era of Indian theatre extended from 320 to 550 CE. During this period, a notable feature was the prevalence of diverse regional languages spoken within individual villages, creating a distinct in house linguistic environment for each locality. So, this vibrance of various dialects and languages leads to the emergence of a theater culture which is equally vibrant and it performance culture rather, and therefore it has to be rendered a separate discussion, separate category, and here we are discussing it under the title of traditional theater. So the types of traditional theater are these. I'm just discussing some examples here because it is not possible to discuss all the traditional theaters or all the indigenous theater cultures of India in the discussion that is taking place in the form of these lectures. So some of them are Bharatnatyam, which has its origin in Tamil Nadu, and its key features are classical dance emphasizing hand gestures and expressions, and the themes are generally the mythological stories, either stories from Mahabharata or the life of Krishna and there's his Radha and Rukmani, then other stories from Mahabharata as well. So one of the poses, the representational pose of Bharatnatyam, is for you to understand and correlate. Then Kathakali. Kathakali is has its origin in Kerala or Kerala, and it is a stylized dance drama with elaborate costumes. And it also borrows stories and themes from the epics like Mahabharata and Ramayana. This is the image which shows you the posture and facial expression of famous Indian classical dance, that is Kathakali. Kathakali relies heavily on this very elaborate dance, very elaborate costume, and very, very fine facial expressions which are acquired by the actors over a very long training period. Then Kudiyattam is also originated in Kerala, and it is an ancient Sanskrit drama performed in stylized manner, and it also takes its themes from Sanskrit plays. Female artist performing Kudiyattam or Kudiyattam, it has two spellings, with traditional face paintings, ornaments, dress in temples of Kerala. Then Yakshagan, it has its origin in Karnataka, and it folk theatre incorporating dance, music, and dialogue. It also borrows from mythological stories. Yakshagan performers' costumes are also shown in this picture. Then in North India, we have things like Nautanki, where key features are folk theatre integrating music, dance, and drama. And social issues and contemporary themes are also part of Nautanki, although there are some texts, musical texts, stories like love stories, heartbreak, revenge. These also are part of Nautanki representations. Ramlila is performed in India, very different parts of India, and it is debatable to say which exactly is the place of origin of Ramlila because it has its presence in different versions in many parts of the country. And the folk theatres performed during Navratri. This is a folk theatre which is performed during the Navratri, depicting stories from the Ramayana. That is the Navratri of the second Navratri that comes before Diwali. That is the time period when the staging of this play is done or Ramlila is done. It is generally a very long kind of a performance which goes for at least 1 week to 10 days or 5 days, but not less than that. And it is dedicated to perform the life of Lord Ram. This is a depiction of Sangeet Natak Academy's Ramlila performance, and you can carry forward this discussion beyond this lecture and try to explore that wherever you are. Maybe you are also watching this from outside this country. You can utilize your time and space to understand what indigenous performance cultures exist in that area of the world. I must add one more important thing, that all the traditional theaters are very significantly representation of the community participation. Without communities participation, these performance cultures, these traditional theaters could not have survived. Even today, if you go to watch such performances, you will find that it's the entire village, it's a lot of people from locality, a city, town, or township. They come together, they come forward to make these things happen. They either run on the patronages or finances generated through donation, charity, and very rarely ticketed performances are there. So this is a and it is connected to people's faith and ritual and belief system. So it's all the more important for the community people to be there, and without their presence these things cannot take place. I'm not talking about this exclusively in Indian time frame or Indian region, but if you look at closely of these aspects, you will find that traditional theaters have a very significant role to play in bringing communities together, and it's the vice versa. Communities also have a very important role in sustaining the presence of Indian traditional theaters. So this much for this discussion of traditional theater and classical theater. Carrying forward the modern theater, we will have a different lecture. The sources that I have used for my pictures are these. I hope you have enjoyed this lecture. Carry forward this discussion and have more of knowledge on Indian theatre. Thank you.